Why everything changes after you save $20,000. Most people live their entire lives trapped in a cycle of paycheck to paycheck survival. But once you hit the $20,000 mark in your savings account, something inside your brain shifts and the world begins to look entirely different. It sounds like just a number on a screen. $20,000 isn't enough to retire on, and it won't buy you a luxury mansion. Yet, mathematically and psychologically, it is the most important milestone you will ever reach in your financial life. To understand why, we have to look at the concept of the emergency fund. Financial experts like Dave Ramsey or Suze Orman often suggest starting with a small $1,000 safety net. That is meant to stop you from using credit cards when your car tires blow out. It is a band-aid. But $20,000? That is not a band-aid. That is a tactical armor suit. When you have $20,000 in a high-yield savings account, you are no longer a victim of circumstances. If your employer cuts your hours, you don't panic. If your landlord decides to hike the rent, you don't have to scramble for a predatory payday loan. You gain something that most people never experience in their adult lives: optionality. Optionality is the power to say no. When you are broke, you are forced to say yes to every terrible boss, every toxic work environment, and every soul-crushing overtime shift just to keep the lights on. Your life is dictated by the immediate need for cash. Once you cross the $20,000 threshold, you can look at a bad situation and decide that you are not willing to endure it anymore. You have the runway to quit, to retrain, or to search for something better. This changes your physiology. Stress is a chemical process. When you are financially insecure, your cortisol levels are constantly elevated. Your brain is in a permanent state of fight or flight. You make short-sighted decisions because your prefrontal cortex is being overwhelmed by fear. Once you hit that $20,000 milestone, your baseline stress level drops. You start sleeping better, you start eating better, you actually become more intelligent because your brain is no longer consuming all its processing power on the threat of insolvency. Look at the statistics from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances. A staggering percentage of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without selling something or borrowing money. When you hold $20,000, you are statistically in a different league than half the country. You are suddenly part of the group that controls their own destiny rather than being controlled by the economy. But it is not just about the safety net. It is about the psychology of momentum. Saving that first $20,000 is incredibly hard. It requires delayed gratification. It requires you to pass on the newest iPhone, the expensive nights out, and the luxury car lease. You have to learn the difference between what you want and what you need. By the time you reach that number, you have fundamentally changed your habits. You have built a muscle for financial discipline that will serve you for the rest of your life. This is where compound interest begins to do the heavy lifting. If you take that $20,000 and put it into an index fund tracking the S&P 500, which has historically returned an average of about 10% annually before inflation, you are no longer just saving money. You are building an employee. That $20,000 is now earning you roughly $2,000 a year in gains without you lifting a finger. It is not much, but it is the beginning of wealth creation. It is the moment your money starts working for you instead of you working for your money. Think about the psychological shift that occurs when you realize your bank account is growing while you sleep. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, begins to vanish. You realize that buying a trendy pair of sneakers or a $5 latte every morning is actually a trade-off against your future freedom. You stop comparing yourself to others and start comparing yourself to the version of you from last year. There is also the matter of professional confidence. When you go into a salary negotiation with $20,000 in the bank, your body language changes. You don't have that desperate energy of someone who absolutely needs the job to survive. Employers can sense that. People who don't need the money often seem more valuable to those who have it. You find yourself speaking up more, taking more risks, and commanding more respect because your leverage has increased. Consider the historical context. In the late 19th century, people didn't have savings accounts. They had land or livestock. If the crops failed, they starved. Today, $20,000 is the digital equivalent of having a full barn and a healthy harvest stored away for the winter. It is the modern version of independence. However, many people get stuck right before the finish line. They reach 5,000, see a shiny new motorcycle, and blow it. They reach 10,000 and decide to take a vacation they cannot afford. The climb to 20,000 is the steepest part of the mountain. It is where you face the most temptation. The system is designed to keep you spending. Marketing algorithms are tailored to your interests, pushing you to consume the moment you feel a sense of success. You have to resist the urge to upgrade your lifestyle once you start seeing the number climb. This is known as lifestyle creep. If you get a raise or find a side hustle, your instinct will be to get a bigger apartment or a nicer car. Don't do it. Maintain your baseline. If you can live on the salary of a person with $5,000 in the bank while you actually possess $20,000, you will become unstoppable. Think about what $20,000 represents in terms of time. If you spend $3,000 a month, $20,000 is nearly 7 months of pure freedom. 7 months to learn a new skill, 7 months to write a book, 7 months to launch a small business. 7 months is a lifetime in the digital economy. Most businesses fail because they run out of cash before they get traction. With $20,000, you are already ahead of the startup curve. Some people argue that cash loses value due to inflation. They say you should invest every single penny immediately. While investing is crucial, you cannot ignore the necessity of liquidity. If you invest everything into illiquid assets like real estate or long-term stocks, and then your car breaks down, you are forced to liquidate at a loss. The $20,000 acts as the foundation that allows you to take those risks elsewhere without the fear of total collapse. There is also the social aspect. Once you hit this milestone, you will notice that your circle of friends might change. You will find it harder to relate to people who are constantly in debt or living paycheck to paycheck. You will start gravitating toward people who think in terms of assets, not liabilities. Your conversation will shift from complaining about the cost of living to discussing investments, side businesses, and personal growth. You aren't being arrogant. You are simply evolving. The world is noisy. Every day, media outlets tell you that the economy is collapsing or that you need to buy this or that to be happy. Having $20,000 is a form of cognitive armor. It allows you to tune out the noise. When you aren't worried about how you will pay your rent next month, you have the bandwidth to think about where you want to be in 10 years. You can finally focus on your vision rather than your reaction. Remember the story of the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise didn't win by sprinting. He won by maintaining a steady, disciplined pace. Saving $20,000 is the ultimate tortoise move. It isn't sexy. It isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a slow, methodical march toward liberation. But once you arrive, you will realize that the prize wasn't just the money. The prize was the person you had to become to accumulate it. You become more disciplined. You become more patient. You become more discerning. You begin to treat your time as a finite, precious resource, and you stop trading it for things that don't matter. This mindset shift is the real wealth that starts to build up in your character. What happens after you hit 20,000? You don't stop. You don't celebrate by blowing it on a party. You reset your goals. Maybe it becomes 50,000. Maybe it becomes a year of living expenses. The goal isn't to accumulate money for the sake of hoarding it. The goal is to reach a level of security where you can finally stop playing the game by everyone else's rules. Ask yourself why you are still struggling to save. Is it your income or is it your habits? Most people blame their income, but even those with high incomes are often broke because they have no financial discipline. If you can't save $20,000 on a modest salary, you probably won't be able to save it on a high salary because your spending will simply expand to match your income. This is why you must fix the habit first. Start tracking every dollar. Use an app, a spreadsheet, or a notebook. Understand where your money is flowing. Are you spending on things that bring you long-term value, or are you just burning capital to get a momentary dopamine hit? Every dollar you save is a vote for your future self. When you reach that $20,000 mark, take a moment to acknowledge it. It is a massive victory. But then, look at it as your new baseline. Never let your account dip below that amount unless it is a genuine, life-altering emergency. Treat it like a sacred deposit. This is the foundation upon which you will build everything else. The transition from a person who lives in fear of the mail to a person who lives with total financial clarity is not a luxury. It is a necessity in the modern world. You owe it to yourself to break the cycle. You owe it to your future to stop living at the mercy of your next paycheck. It starts with the first $100, then the first 1,000, then the 5,000. Every step is difficult, and every step is meant to test your resolve. If it were easy, everyone would do it, and everyone would be free. But the fact that it is hard is exactly why it is valuable. So, how will your life look once you reach that $20,000 milestone? You will have more control, less stress, and more options. You will be able to look your boss in the eye and know you are there because you choose to be, not because you have to be. You will sleep with the peace of mind that comes from knowing you are prepared for whatever life throws at you. This is not the end of your financial journey. It is just the start. It is the base camp of a much larger mountain. From here, you can see the path clearly. From here, you can start to build actual wealth. From here, you can start to dream of things you never thought were possible. The question is no longer whether you can save $20,000. The question is, what will you do with the freedom that comes once you finally have it? Will you use it to build a life of purpose, or will you let it slip away because you couldn't resist the temptation of a fleeting upgrade? The choice is entirely yours. You are the architect of your own financial reality. Start today, start small, but never stop until you reach the milestone that changes everything.